In a nutshell, classical Rome lasted about 1,000 years, roughly 500 BC to 500 AD. Rome grew for 500 years, peaked for 200 years, and fell for 300 years. The first half was the Republic, ruled by elected senators. The last half was the Empire, ruled by unelected emperors.
In its glory days, the word Rome meant not just the city, but what Romans considered the entire civilized world.
Everyone was either Roman or barbarian. People who spoke Latin or Greek were considered civilized, part of the empire. Everyone else, barbarian.
According to legend, Rome was founded by two brothers, Romulus and Remus. Abandoned in the wild and suckled by a she-wolf, they grew up to establish the city. In actuality, the first Romans mixed and mingled here, in the valley between the famous 7 hills of Rome. This became the Roman Forum.
In 509, they tossed out their king and established the relatively democratic Roman Republic. That began perhaps history's greatest success story, the rise of Rome.
From the start, Romans were expert builders, and they had a knack for effective government. This simple brick building was once richly veneered with marble and fronted by a grand portico. It's the Curia. The Senate met here and set the legal standards that still guide Western civilization.
The reign of Julius Caesar, who ruled around the time of Christ, marked the turning point between the Republic and the Empire. The Republic, designed to rule a small city-state, found itself trying to rule most of Europe. Something new and stronger was needed. Caesar established a no-nonsense, more disciplined government, became dictator for life, and for good measure, had a month named in his honor, July.
The powerful elites of the Republic found all this change just too radical. In an attempt to save the Republic and their political power, a faction of Roman senators assassinated Caesar. His body was burned on this spot in 44 BC.
The citizens of Rome gathered here in the heart of the Forum to hear Mark Antony say, in Shakespeare's words, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I've come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." But the Republic was finished, and Rome became the grand capital of a grand empire.
The Via Sacra, or Sacred Way, was the main street of ancient Rome. It stretched from the Arch of Septimius Severus to the Arch of Titus. Rome's various triumphal arches, named after the emperors who built them, functioned as public relations tools. Reliefs decorating the various arches show how war and expansion were the business of state. Rome's thriving economy was fueled by plunder and slaves won in distant wars. Ancient Rome had a population of over 1 million at its peak, and anywhere you dig in the modern city, you'll find remains of the ancient one. Largo, Argentina is a modern transportation hub, with traffic roaring all around some of Rome's oldest temples. The Capitoline Hill, which rises majestically from the busy streets, has long been the home of Rome's city government. During the Renaissance, Michelangelo designed this regal staircase. He gave the square its famously harmonious proportions and its majestic centerpiece, an ancient statue of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. This is a copy. The 2nd century original, the greatest equestrian statue of antiquity, is showcased in the adjacent Capitoline Museum. This, like the other great statues of antiquity, is now safely out of the elements. The museum helps you imagine life before the fall of Rome. These reliefs show Marcus Aurelius performing the various duties of an emperor. Here, as the chief priest or Pontifex Maximus, he prepares to sacrifice a bull. Here on the battlefield, he grants clemency to vanquished barbarian leaders. And this one puts you curbside at a victory parade with the emperor, the Eisenhower of his day, on a chariot, winged victory on his shoulder, and trumpets proclaiming his glory. The art of Imperial Rome almost always carried a message. This dying Gaul, a Roman copy of a Greek original, was part of a monument celebrating another victory over the barbarians. Like any propaganda art, battle scenes stoked imperial pride. You can wander among heroic statues and grand halls and look into the eyes of long-forgotten emperors. And the museum also shows a more peaceful and intimate side of Roman life. Here, a boy quietly pulls a thorn from his foot. At first glance, these look like paintings, but they're actually micro-mosaics made of thousands of tiny chips. This mosaic hung in Emperor Hadrian's villa.
Romans emulated the high culture of the Greeks, and when it came to capturing beauty, their forte was making excellent copies of Greek originals.
The Capitoline Venus is one of the truest representations of the concept of feminine beauty from ancient times. Like so many classical statues, this is a 2,000-year-old Roman copy of a 2,500-year-old Greek original. Rome was born about 3,000 years ago, here along the Tiber River. This was as far upstream as boats could sail, and the first place the river could be crossed by bridge.
As a center of river trade, Rome connected the interior of the Italian peninsula with the Mediterranean. This riverbank would have been bustling in ancient times. Imagine busy docks, ramshackle boats, water mills, and platforms for fishing.
Until modern times, Rome's river was part of its economy. Then, in the 1870s, in order to protect the city from flooding, the Romans walled off the Tiber. They built these tall, anonymous embankments that continue to isolate the river from the city to this day. While Rome was born on the Tiber, today the town seems to ignore its river. But the city's graceful bridges connect thriving neighborhoods. Just over the Tiber from here is one of Rome's most colorful districts. Trastevere is the place to immerse yourself in the crustier side of Rome. The name Trastevere actually means across the Tiber River. Wandering here offers a chance to hone your senses, to see Rome more intimately. You'll discover a world of artisans who found their niche and love it. The people here, Trasteverini, are proud. Old-timers once bragged of never setting foot on the opposite side of the river. As we explore and observe, the big city seems worlds away. For maximum Trastevere fun and insight, I'm joined by my friend and Roman tour guide, Francesca Caruso.
Especially here in Trastevere, you get this sense of the many layers of Rome.
Certainly, that is really the key to understanding Rome. This city, in its almost 3,000 years of history, was never abandoned. So people have just built on top and around of what was already there.
Like a layer cake, isn't it? Where there's a beautiful roof garden.
Yeah. Now, most of us in Rome lived in apartments, so no gardens, no backyards. So we all dream of the attico con terrazzo.
Attico con terrazzo, an attic with a terrace.
Yes, so the skyline of Rome is full of these little jungles on the rooftops.
Everything's so intimate. It's like we're walking through somebody's laundry room.
Yeah, we've always lived very close together here. Sharing space is really not a problem. We don't even have the word for privacy in Italian. We use the English word instead. We simply roll the R, so we say privacy.
Privacy. I know one more Italian word now. So why are so many of the oldest churches in Rome on this side of the river?
Because Trastevere was the neighborhood of foreigners, often Christian, who brought their faith with them. For the whole period of the persecutions, they could not build churches, so Mass would be celebrated in the homes of wealthy converts who offered their homes for Mass.
So then this is one of those kind of churches?
Yes, it was the house of Cecilia, and in later times they built a church dedicated to her.
And today the name of the church?
Is Santa Cecilia.
Now what happened to Saint Cecilia?
Saint Cecilia and her husband were killed because of their faith. The Romans tried to steam her to death for 3 days in her own home, and after that they beheaded her.
This is a beautiful statue. It's just peaceful.
Yes, it's very quiet. There's something very tender about it, and also very sad about a young woman who was killed so brutally for her faith.
The concept of a piazza serving as a community center goes back to ancient times. Piazza Santa Maria in Trastevere is the heart of this neighborhood. With its broad and inviting steps, the fountain was actually designed to be a kind of neighborhood sofa.
Great part of exploring a neighborhood is just sitting on the main square.
is really in our DNA. We've been living in our piazzas as common living rooms since ancient Roman times. It's always been this way, and let's hope it will always be this way in the future too.
And as usual, the district's main church fronts the main square. The Church of Santa Maria in Trastevere is also one of Rome's oldest and most beloved churches.
Like Cecilia's church, it's built on the site of a 3rd century home where early Christians worshipped illegally. And like the city itself, it's been a work in progress, rebuilt continuously over the centuries.
The portico is decorated with ancient fragments filled with early Christian symbolism. The anchor, birds, people with hands up, praying as evangelical Christians do today. Many of these stones were originally lids to burial niches from the catacombs. Stepping inside takes you back centuries. The granite columns were scavenged from ancient Roman buildings. The church feels like an ancient hall of justice. That's because early churches adopted the pre-Christian basilica floor plan, a rectangular space divided by rows of columns. These mosaics are early medieval, well over 1,000 years old. They're rich in symbolism. Mary is given high stature. She's at the throne with Jesus in heaven. He has his arm around his mother, as if introducing her to us. Locals claim this is the first church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. I never leave without checking in with St. Anthony, who hangs out in the back. He's a favorite of the poor and is inundated with prayer requests on scraps of paper. Rome is a city of magnificent art. It's everywhere you look, and most of it was paid for by the church. Public squares like Piazza Navona with Bernini's much-loved Four Rivers fountain are decorated with church-sponsored art.
Until modern times, it was the church that had the power, the money, and the need for great art. And going to church offered the masses, whose lives were so dreary otherwise, a promising glimpse of the glory that awaited them in the next life.
And visiting today, our challenge is to appreciate the art from that perspective as a medieval worshiper. Popping into churches, many of them nondescript on the outside, you'll find sumptuous art treasures inside. The wonderful thing about seeing art in churches is that it's in situ, not hanging on museum walls, but exactly where the art was designed to be enjoyed. Thoughtfully stringing together a series of lesser-known churches can be an art lover's delight. For example, dropping by the relatively obscure Santa Maria Sopra Minerva, we find a glorious Gothic interior laden with impressive art. The altar sits upon the tomb of St. Catherine, with the ornate tombs of two Medici popes looking down. For generations, pilgrims have marveled at this Michelangelo statue of Christ carrying the cross. And in the side chapel is a lovely series of frescoes by Filippo Lippi, showing the good works of St. Thomas Aquinas, accompanied by a celestial serenade. Another even less visited church, Santa Prassede, is decorated with the best Byzantine mosaics in Rome. They date from the 800s. In this chapel, the gold ceiling represents heaven. An icon like Christ emerges from the background, supported by winged angels in white. Saints walk among patches of flowers, while Mary and Jesus overlook the altar. While this small chapel is impressive even to our modern eyes, in the darkness of medieval Rome, it was stunning, celebrated as the Garden of Paradise. Another gem awaiting those exploring Rome's back streets is the Church of St. Peter in Chains. Its fine side altar was sculpted during the Renaissance, an age when realism, emotion, even psychology were injected into the art. Its centerpiece is a masterpiece by Michelangelo. Michelangelo tells a story in marble. Moses has just returned from a meeting with God. He senses trouble back home. He turns to see his followers worshiping a golden calf. Gripping the 10 Commandments under his muscular arm, he's about to rise up and punish the naughty children of Israel. We're meeting up with Francesca again, riding the subway out to Ostia, Antica, to explore what's left of ancient Rome's mighty port.
The ruins of Ostia rival the more famous ruins at Pompeii. While Pompeii is 3 hours away, Ostia is just a half-hour train ride from downtown Rome.
2,000 years ago, this was a working port town. Wandering around, you can imagine the bustle and complexity of a once thriving port of 60,000 people. Warehouses, apartment flats, mansions, shopping arcades, all laid out in a typically Roman grid plan of streets. Located where the Tiber River meets the sea, Ostia was founded in the 4th century before Christ. It served as a naval base, protecting Rome from any invasion by river. It was also an administrative and warehousing center, keeping more than 1 million Romans fed and in sandals.
But eventually things went downhill for Ostia. Rome fell, the river changed course. The port silted up and was abandoned. The entire place became a malaria-infested swamp, and Ostia was forgotten.
The mud that buried Ostia actually protected it from the ravages of time, including stone-scavenging medieval peasants. And thanks to extensive and ongoing excavations, there's lots to see. This fine mosaic decorated the Baths of Neptune. At the bottom of the pool, Neptune rides 4 horses through the sea. Apart from the Cupid riding the dolphin, the sea looks pretty frightening, which, to those ancients, it was. The adjacent theater seated 4,000. Plays were rowdy daytime events with lots of audience participation. Perhaps a bit like today's school field trip. Typical of Roman urban design, this complex mixed religion, business, and entertainment. A grand theater facing a temple surrounded by a commercial square. The Square of the Guilds, lined with offices of ship owners and traders, was the bustling center of Rome's import-export industry. Mosaics on the sidewalk advertised services offered by various shops, with symbols for sailors and merchants who were either illiterate or couldn't read Latin. Shippers showed off fine vessels. This lighthouse was the sign of the great Egyptian city of Alexandria. Grain containers are reminders that grain was the major import of Ostia.
Rome imported most of what it consumed. These big jars contained oil, wine, grain that came from all over the Mediterranean, was stored here and then shipped off to Rome. This is the mill. Ostia was famous for the quality of its bread. They would put sticks through these holes, and then a donkey or a human would push them around.
Okay, so you'd pour the grain in here, grind it up.
Yes.
Flour comes out the bottom.
Yes.
And that's stone ground, I'd say.
Isn't it really?
I love to imagine how people must have lived here.
Yes, in apartments that could be easily up to 5 stories high. They had no kitchens, no plumbing, no heating, so they used these apartments like tents at a camping site just to sleep.
No kitchens?
No kitchens. So even to eat, they would have to go to a fast food or a cafeteria. Of the time, it was just across the street.
So you just step across the street to the corner diner.
Yes.
2,000 years ago, this was the neighborhood bar.
Yes, like a cafeteria or a fast food place.
Amazing.
You would come up to the counter and maybe order something to go. Maybe you might see some food or some drinks on display here. Or if you had time, you would come inside and you could have something sitting down. And here, probably they had a display of the food or maybe the cups and the plates. And then here there's a pictorial menu that shows us what was offered. So we have food, we have drinks, and we have music.
So music, on like Tuesday night we got live music out in the courtyard.
Yes, why not? As you can see, public restrooms are really public and quite advanced. They had running water coming through.
So there's a stream going all the time, constantly flushing.
Constantly flushing, so constantly clean. Imagine frescoes on the walls and even revolving doors at the entrance.
So easy to underestimate how advanced Rome was.
That's really true.
Ostia's delightful little museum helps bring life to these ruins. These fine statues, tangled wrestlers, kissing cupids, playful gods, adorned the courtyards of wealthy Ostia families. Many of the statues are 2nd and 3rd century Roman copies inspired by famous but now lost Greek originals. These portrait busts are of real people, like those you'd meet on the streets right here 1,800 years ago. One thing Roman artists did well was carve realistic busts. It was their forte because Roman religion revered ancestors, the man of the house, and his father and grandfather. That's why statues of Dad and Grandpa were often found in the corner of any proper house. Also, with the emperor considered a god, you'd find his bust in classrooms, at the post office, and all over town. For a breezy escape from the big city noise and intensity, head for the Borghese Gardens, Rome's Central Park. Romans are proud of their generous green spaces. This sprawling park has long offered people here a place to relax, unwind, and let the kids run wild. The park's centerpiece is the Borghese Gallery. Once a cardinal's lavish mansion, today it welcomes the public.
As is the case with many of Europe's top sites, admission requires a reservation. Getting one's easy. Just a quick phone call or visit the website, and you get an entry time. Good guidebooks have all the details.
The wealthy Borghese family filled their 17th century villa with art. This was the age when the rich and powerful not only collected beautiful art, but actually employed leading artists to spiff up their homes. Cardinal Borghese was the Pope's nephew and one of the wealthiest people in Rome. With unlimited money, his palace dazzled with both fine art of the past, such as Raphael's exquisite Deposition, and with the best art of the day. Each room has a masterpiece at its center, like this intriguing look at Napoleon's sister, Pauline, by Canova. The polished marble is lifelike, even sensuous. Bernini's David is textbook Baroque. Bursting with life, David's body, wound like a spring and lips pursed as he prepares to slay the giant, shows the determination of the age. Bernini was just 25 when he sculpted this, and the face of David is his. Caravaggio tackled the same topic on canvas. Grabbing an opportunity to shock his viewers, the artist Caravaggio also sneaks in a self-portrait, this time as the head of Goliath. In keeping with the Baroque age, Bernini's Rape of Persephone packs an emotional punch. Persephone's entire body seems to scream for help as Pluto drags his catch into the underworld. His three-headed dog howls triumphantly. Bernini's Apollo chasing Daphne is a highlight. Apollo, happily wounded by Cupid's arrow, chases Daphne, who's saved by turning into a tree. In typical Baroque style, Bernini captures the instant when, just as Apollo's about to catch Daphne, her fingers turn to leaves. Her toes sprout roots, and Apollo's in for one rude surprise. The statue, as much air as stone, makes a supernatural event seem real. This classical scene, while plenty fleshy, comes with a church-pleasing moral. Chasing earthly pleasures leads only to frustration. The place to contemplate that thought is at the Vatican.